Let's start from the Mishnah in the middle of Nun Daled Amud Beis. HaKohanim shapaglu b'mikdash mezidin chayav. And if they made a korban pigul on purpose, generally when we talk about pigul, we understand that it was like shegeg, he spaced out, and we still hold him accountable that the korban is no good. But a kohen who does it purposely, so then he's chayav to pay for the korban that he ruined, right? I mean, it's in a sense you have a guy that's fixing you're doing some construction in your house and he hit a wire and your house blew up, so you got to pay for it. So he did damage. So here's the same thing. Question is, and this is the Gemara in Zvachim, that how do you know that he made it pigul? Right? So there's a Manda Omar in the Gemara, I think it's even a Tana that says that it's best to leave your mind blank when you're doing the korban, because if you're going to start thinking one thing and then you're going to start thinking something else, and you may get confused, right? And also, just like a simple thing, you still put a tongue, you just say the wrong thing, and you end up in hot water over here. So obviously that's not not the halacha, but it's an interesting concept, b'chlal, just to, we're so concerned that he's going to have the wrong thoughts when he does the korban that we even go to such an extent to say such thing. But all the machshavas, the whole zvachim and is talking about all the machshavas. How do you know what he's thinking anyways? How do you trust him? How do you trust that kohen altogether, right? Another question. We're going to see the answer in the Gemara. How do you trust the sefer when he's writing tefillin, or when he's writing the sefer Torah, that the Shem Hashem that he's writing he's writing a big kavanah? You can't see kavanah. It's one thing if he says, okay, he's your Shemayim, right? Otherwise, how do you know? Maybe he's thinking about cotton candy. He's not thinking about anything important. All right, so the Gemara is going to discuss this also. So Tanu Rabban, he's dealing with Taurus, with another person, and the Reuven tells Shimon, let's say Taurus that the Taurus that I was doing with you became Tameh. The same scenario, just not with Taurus, but with a korban. He was dealing with some kind of korban. The zvachim that I was doing with you became pigul. So now he's believed. So the question is, why is he believed? Well, why not? Right? He's shavi anav sheikh hatzich disura kind of thing, maybe. You remember on May 4th, we were doing some kind of something together, and the Taurus that became Tameh. On March 15th, we were doing some kind of korban together, and it became pigul. Einoy neman, he's not believed. So, in fact, the Gemara, Mashna Reisha, Mashna Sefer, what's the difference then? In the first case, he is believed, and in the second case, where he said a certain day that it happened, he's not believed. So, Amar Abaya, and for the Gemara, Zok Abaya, Kosher B'Yodai Neman. If it's B'Yodai to do something when it happens, he tells him right away when it happened that something's happening, that something became Tameh, or that something went wrong. So then, he's going to be Neman. And Rashi explains, Kosher B'Yodai Lases B'Shosha Meidiyai, to do it while he was notifying his friend of what happened, he's Neman. Let's say if it was still in his hand, he's still able to change the status of it to make it pigul, or to make it tameh. We're talking about a kohen who's doing the avodah. He said after the shchita that he made it pigul, b'shchita. But he can continue and making it pigul by the other avodas, or he could continue doing the whole korban, so to speak, and tell us only afterwards, or when he's just about finished the korban, that he was mefagel by the shchita. We can't believe him about something. We're not going to trust him about something that he said that happened 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago. That we don't. Rava gives a different reason, which is very similar, but different reason than Abaya, to answer the question of why in the Reisha he's Neman and in the Sefer he's not. Going to you see this guy, they dive in the same shul every day. So he sees him every day, and he never told him anything. And then 6 weeks later, he tells him, "Oh, you remember what we were, pigging grapes 6 weeks ago? Oh, I was tamei then, and I never told you." So, in such a case, he's not going to be neman. But b'shas ma'aseh is going to say, "Oh, what just happened? I became tamei." Right? saying the Mishnah has a case where you have a kohen that's oimed al gabe mizbeach, and then he realizes he's tamei, or he's oimed al gabe mizbeach and he realizes he's a chalal and can't be makav a carbon, right? Or a person's eating truma and he realizes that he became, he feels that he became tamei, right? Or someone notified him that he became tamei. So there are certain cases there is a halacha of how to deal with that b'shas ma'isa, but to tell somebody, oh, it happened 6 weeks ago, that doesn't count as anything. So Rav Omar Zok Rashi aval bisha ein biyodai neman. Even though it's not biyodai, he's still neman. B'sefer k'goyin da'ashki chem mikame yo'idna v'lo Omar levahash tamale. Why is he telling me now? Right? It's one thing if he tells me, even if, let's say, I don't know exactly what the shear is, how much time he has to tell him, right? But let's say we give him 12 hours, I don't know, something like him ace lays, right? It's fine. But this is 6 weeks later, what's that got to do with anything? He sees them every day by Shachris. So if you see him, then he should tell you. Why is he not telling you? Elamai has something up his sleeve. He's not interested in letting you onto the whole truth. So the Gemara brings a story that somebody told his friend that Tarash Sisi must be plenty nitmu. You remember last week we were, busy with grapes, and we were, we both said we were tahar, and they became tamei, and I became tamei then. So also kamei to Rabami. So he went to Rabami to ask Rabami what to do. Amalei sure said in neman. Minadin he's not neman. Amalei Ravasi. So Ravasi told him, Rabbi, Ata Omer Kain, Hachi Amar Rabbi. This is what you're saying. This is what Rabbi Yochanan said. Mishum Rabbi Yosi. Ma esesh atar haminasai. What could we do? The Torah believes him. I mean, he says that really the truth is that he's ain't neman. But Zok Rashi sure said that. Kalemer hadin noisin. Ata Omer Kain. That the Torah believed him. The Torah trusts this person. What are we talking about when we say that the Torah trusts him? So where did the Torah trust him? The Kohen Gadol, when he does the Avodah in Yom Kippur, nobody's there. How does anybody know what he's doing? I mean, we're not talking about the second base of Mikdash where those guys were doing all kinds of funny things, right? And they didn't make it through the year, right? So this is going to get into a little bit the sugya of Eidach and Bisur, right? What's the svar of Eidach and Bisur? What's the Makar Halacha? Why should it be so? So one of all the Rishonim, the Rashba and Gittin on that base in the beginning of the Masechta brings this Gemara amongst others, but the Rishonim don't end up going with this, right? How can I go to your house and eat? I trust your shrita. So the halacha is Eidach and Bisur. If you tell me it's kosher, that means that you said Eidus over here, and I have to rely on you like Eidus. Right? Now, it becomes a problem. Because let's say I meet somebody and I say, can I eat by you? Can I eat a Suda by you? So the guy says, sure. Then as the guy is sitting there, he says, oh, well, maybe I don't trust your shechita. Right? The guy already said to Eidos that his food is kosher. So you can't go and take apart his Eidos. So you don't have to eat the food, but you have to accept his Eidos. Ramesha writes such a thing in the Tshuva. It's not so simple. Okay, anyways. So the Torah believes the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. The Chi Omar Pigul Mehaman. Because if the Kohen Gadol is going to come out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim or come out of doing one of the avodas on Yom Kippur when nobody's there, and he's going to be believed. And how would we know? Well, the pasuk says, "V'chol adam la'yiyah ba'il mayit." No one's allowed to be in the oil mayit, so it's not possible for anybody to know. So Elamai, we have to trust him. Elalav mishum de mehaman, right? Elamai must be because we trust him. Maybe, like certain people, they speak out everything that they do. Like they're setting the table, they say, okay, a fork is going to go here, a spoon is going to go there, right? So the Kohen Gadol is doing the avodah, and he says, I'm going to really be mark of this almanas to eat it shaloi b'zmano, right? So you heard him say shaloi b'zmano. So you say, hey, 1 second, this guy's making pickle in there, no one's supposed to be in there, right? But maybe they heard him. Ilav the meheman. Right, so if we wouldn't believe him, avagav de shemani nami lemehem. But if we're not going to trust him, even if we hear him say something, we're not going to trust him because we're just not going to trust him at all. Right? The dama labazar hachikoma. But maybe he's talking about that he's going to do pig. Maybe what we're hearing is that he's going to be doing pigel later, not necessarily now. Maybe there was like a small window or a small door that they were like, through the keyhole. And they were looking in the keyhole to see what was going on in there. And they saw that he was doing things that he shouldn't be doing. Right? Because it's like this. you have all these jokes. When I was a kid, there were all these jokes about, hearing all the things in the cave, and then they turned on the lights, and it was a monkey eating a banana, right? So if you're just hearing something, you have no idea what the context is of what's going on inside the room. There's nobody there. So how do you know he's be'emes making something pigul? Maybe he's talking about something later. So when the Gemara says that you saw him in the pishpish, you saw him through the small door, that means that he was saying it. You saw him. He was doing an avodah. He was doing the zrika, let's say, or he was doing the. Rashi says that b'shas amira hayamaza. While he was saying this, you saw him putting the dam in the mizbeach pnimi, that is, right? So then you would know what he's doing. So Zak the Gemara Kash. The Gemara leaves it as a question because in essence it's a strong question what we're saying over here. Okay, now the Gemara is going to talk about Sefer Torah. How do you trust a Sefer with a Sefer Torah? Ahuda also kamed Rabami. Someone came to Rabami. Omar Lei, he said Sefer Torah kasavti l'plani askar shaloi loi kasavti l'shman. When I wrote the Shemus of Hashem, the askar in the Sefer Torah was not written l'shma. Omar Lei, Sefer Torah biad me. Who's holding on to the Sefer Torah? Omar Lei biad lekach. I sold it already. Yeah. Derech Agav. What came to mind over here is that I remember the Mishabura writes in the simon about Safra, somebody that everybody skips. I think it's there. It's around there in Mishabura. He says, Mela, if somebody shechts and sells treifus, he's being machshel the rabbim. When a person is not careful, not medactic in a Sefer Torah, so every single aliyah, every bracha that a person makes, and it's a bracha of Atala, is tremendous isser. And how many behemoths does this guy shecht? Anyways, it could even bring such a thing from Sefer Chasidim, and it was extremely sharp l'shainis about somebody who does such a thing. Yeah, and here we have the Sefer saying that he was being murdered. He felt too guilty not to admit it, and he says that he didn't write it l'shma. So he said, "Who has the Sefer Torah?" He said, "He biad lekeh." Amalei neman atul hafses charcha. You're neman to lose your business. V'iyata neman lahafses Sefer Torah. But you're not trusted to say that you messed up the Sefer Torah. So why is that? Let's see Rashi. V'iyata neman hoil ve'en biyadcha. Going back to Abaya's svara, it's not biyadcha, so you can't say that. It's only if it's biyadcha, we can check it, we can figure it out, but over here, it's not biyadcha anymore, you can't do it. Omalei Rabbi Yirmiyah. So Rabbi Yirmiyah said to him, Nehida hifzeh schar askar, schar the Sefer Torah kulei mihifzeh. So he doesn't have the Shemus of Hashem properly in the Sefer Torah. What about the rest of the Sefer Torah? The rest of the Sefer Torah should be good. Omalei in, shekol Sefer Torah she'en askar, shalek tzuvas l'shman, en eshava klum. You're going to tell me that a Sefer Torah that doesn't have the proper Shem Hashem is still a good Sefer Torah? Rather not. If the Sefer Torah doesn't have the Azkar is written Lishma, it's no good. The whole Sefer Torah is no good. Even one ice in a Sefer Torah that's not written properly is no good. So there's halacha that you could fix it up. If you wrote something Shalei Lishma, you could always go it over with the pen again and have a mind and you can fix it. So why don't you do that? So Kidman name of the like Rabbi Yehuda. So who's this going to be like? We're going to say this is not like Rabbi Yehuda. It's not. It's really the Tanya. Hareisha Yitzorach Lichtav Es Hashem. B'niskaven Lichtav Yehuda. It's interesting that Rabbi Yehuda is the one that's talking about this. I guess it was negeh for him personally. Yeah? What happens all the time? That a person's writing a puzzle, a person's writing stam something. He writes Yiyah, and by mistake the second Yud got a little too long. And he's stuck with Hashem by the paper. He's got a major issue. Right? He needed to write the Shem, but Yehuda. But he dafke didn't want to write the Shem. He wanted to write Yehuda. And he made a mistake, and he ended up writing the Shem Hashem, and he did not put a Dalet in there. So his original intention was not to write the Shem Hashem, but he ended up writing the Shem Hashem. Meaning, it's really interesting, because he was really supposed to write the Shem Hashem, but he had in mind to write Yehuda, which was wrong. And he ended up forgetting the Dalet, and he ended up writing the Shem Hashem. So Maver Lav Kumas Makacha de Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says that you could do that. It's not good. And I guess he's got to fix it. However you would fix that. I feel the term Rabbi Yehuda. So I could even say it's Rabbi Yehuda. Because Ad Kalakam Rabbi Yehuda Alabachad Azkara. Rabbi Yehuda is talking about one single Azkara from the entire Sefer Torah. Aval the Kuli Sefer Torah Lord. But to do this for the entire Sefer Torah, to be Maver Lav Kumas, to go over every single Shem Hashem in the Sefer Torah, that we don't do. Why? It's going to look funny that the Shem Hashem is going to be like way too inky, much inky, and the rest of the Sefer Torah is going to look fine, so we don't want a Sefer Torah to look like that. I guess it's going to be lacking in Hadar, which then maybe is the question on what's so bad about that. I mean, technically speaking, it's kosher, just that the Hiddur of the Sefer Torah is not 100%, so I don't know, maybe it's a question. Okay, weiter. Someone came to Rababo. This is an interesting case. He says that the klaf, when he was making the klaf for the Sefer Torah, he never made a klaf l'shma. You know, I was by some sefer, a tzitzis macher in Meisharim, and my cousin was schmoozing with the guy, and he said when you feed the sheep that you're going to spin the wool from, do you also do that l'shma? You know, this guy has like obviously 10,000 chumras, right? So Omalei Sefer Torah biad mi. He said he didn't make the klaf l'shma. So he says, who owns the Sefer Torah? Omalei biad lekech. The lekech has it. So again, according to Abaya, it's too bad. It's too late. So Omalei mitechshat and nemel hafs eskarchat and nemel hafs Sefer Torah. Because you're telling me that everything that you made, that this whole production, this whole line of production that you were doing with klaf, you ruined. So because you're taking on such a great loss, Nemon lahavsa Sefer Torah, you're also going to be trusted to say Sefer Torah. Frankly, what's the pshat in this? 1 minute ago we just said that he's not Nemon to be mafsid Sefer Torah. Nemon lahavsa skarcha, and Nemon lahavsa Sefer Torah. Over here he was saying that he is Nemon lahavsa skarcha. So what's the difference in the two cases? So exactly Gemara and Ham and Aleph. Why is this different than Ravami? Because he said that he's not Nemon to be mafsid Sefer Torah. So Hassam equal to Memar Torah b'der Rav Yirmiyah. Over there, maybe he was Torah b'der Rav Yirmiyah. The Rav Yirmiyah said maybe he could still think that the Sefer Torah is kosher even if he just messes up in the Shem Hashem. But Hacha came to Kamav said Kulei Agre v'Asa v'Omar Emer Kushtak Omar. Over there, he thinks he only messed up a little bit. He only messed up on a couple of words throughout the Sefer Torah. That's not so bad. But over here, this is 100% of everything that this guy did. He messed up. Nobody's going to do that. So if he's doing that, Hitaka means it earnest. Hitaka means it seriously. And he's saying the truth, and we have to trust him for what he's saying. So when it comes to this, with the klafim, because he's claiming, his taina is that everything got ruined, so then we're going to trust him. And it's taka different than the case of Rabami. Okay. Zak the Mishnah, here's a famous Mishnah that comes up in a few other places. Hey, Rabbi Yוחnan and Gudgedä. Again, this is going to be going also back to the original idea of this parak to discuss the different things that are mipnei takana, mipnei takana, tikkun olam, or other similar such takanas. So hey, Rabbi Yוחnan and Gudgedä ala chareishes shehisia avia sheyotze beget. That you have a deaf girl, that her father married her off, that she goes out with the get. So technically speaking, the father was the one that was makabel the kedushin for her because she's a ketana. And avada she's an H's ish. So Zok Rashi afilu hachi yaitze beget mekabel as gitin. Aval gav the lesba daita. So even if she's not misrata to gerushin, even if she doesn't want the gerushin, because gerushin works bal karcha, so even if she's not a bardas bichlal, she still goes out with the get. It's interesting because if you look in Chagiga, the Gemara says over there in Dav Gimel or so that Rabbi Yוחnan and Gudgedä had two nephews that were deaf, and nobody wanted to take them into yeshiva because, like, how could they communicate with anybody? And it ended up being that these two guys knew Kol Terakula at the end of the day, and they were able to communicate with. It seems like they had mostly learned on their own because they weren't able to hear the shir from other people. But at the end of the day, they mastered tremendous amounts of Torah. It was a fascinating concept b'chlal. So, we always say that a cherish is somebody, he's not part of society, Cherish we always say that, right? Rashi in Psachim, when it talks about Batek HaCherish, Rashi says, interesting, in the Kud over there, that it means that we don't know. I mean, if I want to know if somebody's a intelligent person or not, intelligent, I don't mean as in smart, as in, can you have a conversation with him? So you go over to him, you say, good morning, how are you? And you try to hear what he's going to respond to that. A cherish, you try to talk to him, there's no response. So we don't know. So Rashi over there says that it could be a very smart person. We just have no idea. So we have no way of communicating with him. But the Gemara getting later on about Ayin or so, Ayin Beis or Ayin Gimel, there's a whole sugi of cherish over there. And the Gemara is pretty clear that if they have some kind of communication, then it's fine. That's their way of talking. They don't use vocals to talk. Maybe they use sign language or even if they write to each other. There is some kind of communication, so they are considered a bardas. You have a ketana that's married to, you have a ketana who's a Yisraelis, and she's married to a kohen, she could eat truma, because it's she's a yisoima. Zok Rashi, v'hi yisoima. The loy having a soon element rabbanon. She could still eat truma midiraisa. I'm sorry, she could eat truma midrabbanon. Bahani nesuin v'legas runin midi. We're not chayshish that she's going to end up eating something that she's not allowed to eat. Me'im mesa ba'li yarsha. And if she dies, the husband's yarisher. Meaning that's like a regular marriage. Well, amorish hagadol shabana bebiru she'id l'sdam b'nei takonas hashavet. Let's say I was driving past the lumber yard one day and I said, I need some beams for my house that I'm building, and I grabbed a bunch of beams, stuffed it in my truck, and I drove on, and I never paid for it, and I stole it. And now the guy from the lumber yard comes to me and he says, listen, I'm missing 10 of my beams, and I know that you stole it, give it to me. Right? Do I have to take apart my whole house to give it to him? So Zakti Gomorrah, that this Zakti Mishnah, there's such a thing as Takonas Hashavim. We don't require a person to take apart his whole house to return those beams. So that's what Takonas Hashavim is. Because otherwise people aren't going to be willing to pay back anything. A chadas that was stolen, that the rabbim doesn't know about it, that it's stolen, it's still mechaper. So let me Rashi what this means over here. The Kohanim, I guess, don't know that it was stolen. Meaning, if I stole a sheep and I brought that sheep for the chatas, it's a good one, stealing a chatas. I think it's even worse than stealing a Gemara Bava Kama, right? So he steals he brings it, it's a pasuk. The Gemara Sukkah does with it. Sayne gazel ba'olam, right? It's like, it's mamish like a title of Visharis the other, yeah. So so it's loynoi del rabbim. It's still mechaperes, and he doesn't need to bring another one. Mibnei takonas ham is bad, but Gemara mefarish mishum hanach tarti basrayis and mishum takonin inu tanu lehacha. And the reason why we're mentioning these things over here is because it's similar to these concepts of takana that we've been talking about until this point. Okay, so the Gemara is going to go through each one a couple of lines. Amar Rava meidusay shal Yechonam and Gudgedä. So from the edus of Rabbi Yechonam and Gudgedä, we learn that if a person says, Omar la'edim, Ru'u getzeh shani noisin, if a person says, I'm going to give this get to the Isha, because of Omar la kinti shtar chayzeh, harezim megarashes. Very interesting halach. Normal will say, when you're giving somebody a get, there's a process of the get, and you go to the bezin, and you have the guy who writes the get, you have the sefer, and you have the edim, and you have the masadik, and you have the whole situation, right? But here, he gives it a paper, and says, by the way, this is a shtar, I want you to hold on to it. Hold on to this paper. It's an important document. Yeah, she's going to open it up and say it's a get. She's going to be like, "What's this all about?" She doesn't know anything about it. Right? Harez Megureshas. She's Megureshas. But why is she Megureshas? Because we were saying that how could the Hareshas go out with a get? We're saying because she's Yitzabal Karcha. Right? She doesn't need her das for Gerushin, as Rashi said in the Mishnah. Right? So the Isha ki nafka bal karcha nafka ve'in misrata begerushin afilu hachi nafka hilkach lebein and daita. So the same. So Zok Rava, lefi what Rabbi Yechonam and Gudgedä is saying, this halacha would be true. Kids yishtar that. I mean, even if you don't tell her to get, it's still going to go through. It's still going to be a good get. To me, like Rabbi Yechonam and Gudgedä lebein and daita, because Rabbi Yechonam and Gudgedä said you don't need the das of the Isha. Hachanam lebein and daita. So in our case, that Rava mentioned, you don't either need a das. So pshita, for the Gemara is pasha. So now the time, because I might think came into Amar Kinti Shtarchav Zeb to Lebatle, a whole different thing. Maybe the reason why Rava needs to speak out his case of what we would learn from Yechonam and Gudgedä is because he's going to say, one second, maybe he's calling it a shtar chayv because he doesn't really want to divorce her and he's being mevatel the get, right? So Kamash Blum that he's not being mevatel the get and he still wants to use it this way. Im isa the batle le'edim haba amalu. Right? But frankly Gemara, but if he's going to be mevatel it, then he should tell the Edom. Why is he not telling the Edom? So v'haydak Omar halchit mishum kisufa. But the reason why he's not saying that, the reason why he's saying that it's a shtar chayv, because if a person is going to say, oh, it's a get, people will get nervous. I don't want him to get nervous. He's embarrassed. He's going to feel uncomfortable that he's being megarish. Ishtay. So he just says kinti shtar chayv said, and in the middle of the Yom. Yeah. Then the next case in the Mishnah was Al Katana Bas Yisrael, right? So she's a Yisoima, right? And she was married off Midrabanon, right? So she could eat Truma. Vilu Chareshas Lo Yochla. But a Chareshas, a woman who's deaf, she's not able to eat Truma. My time. So maybe she's going to end up eating what she's not allowed to eat. She's going to end up eating Isser. Says Rashi, Charesh is loy ochla betruma. Midashani tana b'milsei. The Arba Chareshas or Shavka Vanokat Tana Shraman Chareshas Gedela. Then Yisrael the Rabbanon the Kavsanin loy ochla de Kedushinida. So we're assuming like this, that a Ketana in the Mishnah Midrabbanon she can eat truma, right? So Shmami no the Chareshas Gedela. We're not talking about a Ketana. We're talking about a Chareshas Gedela. Then her Nisuin is altogether Midrabbanon also because she's not a Bardas. Right? So loy ochlei de kedushin dida. So, but why should that be? She's not able to eat truma with her kedushin. So how come over here we're saying that she could eat? Bilucharesh loy ochla. So that's Gemara my time. Meaning hanisui cheresh v'cheresh is not rabbanon tekinu. B'yavamis, but cheresh and also it's also Yedir a whole parak in Yavamis that discusses.
We're saying that hadeshet that is gedolah that she can eat truma.
No,
She can or
she
cannot?
cannot.
She cannot
Because maybe she's going to xerish amayachel cherish b'chereshas. Maybe she's going to end up feeding it to the cherish.
Who's that?
Let's see Rashi. Shemayachel. Shemayachel kain cherish b'chereshas. Maybe the cherish is going to end up giving the truma to the chereshas. So yisharis lahachel pikech b'chereshas. If you're going to be matir for the pikeach to feed the deaf woman truma, we're going to say that no matter what, no matter who's feeding, no matter who's giving the food, they can give it to a chareshus. Well, parach. In fact, the Gemara lechol katan. But maybe he should. Maybe the chareshus should still be allowed to eat it. Meaning, in either case, the chareshus should still be allowed to eat it. Why? Well, because we have a Gemara that a katan oichel nevelis, right? Bezin is not mitzvah lahav rishay. We know that. That's a Gemara, right? That a katan oichel nevelis, the ain't bezin mitzvah lahav rishay. That's a Gemara Yavamis. Rashi brings it. Kufyu dalet. But feel a bit truma deraisa teichel. So even if it's truma deraisa, at the end of the day, we're not mitzvah lahav rishay. So even if he's, meaning like this, if there's a katan and he goes into McDonald's and buys a cheeseburger, ain't bezin mitzvah lahav rishay. Bezin is not mechuyev to go and stop him. This is his deal.
He's not high in this one, right?
Right.
Okay.
So the same thing with the Harish.
What does that
Because she's mechuyev in the same way that a katan's mechuyev, because she's not about das. She doesn't have das.
So therefore, you're telling me a prerequisite to eating teruma is that they have to be bar da'at.
Yeah, for sure. That's what the Gemara is saying. V'lecha. Why? Because katan eichel nevelis. So the Gemara no, because the Gzer is the other way around. Because maybe the cherish is going to give, maybe the cherish is the husband, and he's going to give the wife who's the pikachas to eat truma. And the way it works is that it goes after the husband, and the husband is not a kayan, so then he's not allowed to eat the truma. Yeah. Because I want to see Rashi over here also.
How could it? So just to clarify.
One second. Let's just finish the Gemara with Rashi. Then if we still need to clarify, we'll clarify. No problem. Just 1 second. V'lecha b'truma d'Rabbanan. Why can't they eat truma d'Rabbanan like the Mishnah was talking about? So Zak the Gemara Gzer Sham Asi Lecha b'truma d'Raisa. Maybe they'll end up being truma d'Raisa. So what's this whole business over here? Look at Rashi Gzer Sham Yachal Cherish. Kayin she'en kinyan a kinyan. Right? A kayin is a cherish and he married a isha, so his kinyan is not a kinyan because he's not a bardas. And he married a pikachas. He married a woman who's able to hear. Shemuzheres ala iser. She is not allowed to do any isurim because she's mechuyev in all mitzvahs. So hilkach gozer pikach b'chareshes. Therefore, mishum cheresh b'pikachas. Meaning that if we make the gzeira, who is the deaf one? The husband or the wife? Right?
I'm totally confused. I have no idea.
So there's a gzeira that if you have the pikach, the husband is the one that could hear.
Right.
And the chareshes, and the one that cannot hear is the wife. Right. So we make a gzeira that even in that case, they cannot eat truma, mishum cherish bepikagas, because we may confuse it with the case where the husband's the one that is deaf with the wife that is deaf. Meaning, it's one thing to confuse, like we're confused about a pikech and a chereshes, or a cheresh and a pikachas. But to confuse a katan and a gedola, or a katana and a godol, that we don't confuse. The katan lesly nesun afilim in the rabbanon. A katan has known nesun even according to the rabbanon. Kedamar biyavamis shaita the katan shenisun nashim neshesem b'turos v'nachalitza v'nayivu. They're totally off the hook with chalitza and yivim because the kedushin is not the nesuin. That is, it has no bearing at all. It has no standing at all. So you'll ask me, what about a katana? The Torah gave rights for the katana shehisiya aviha, or midrabanon, a yisaima that her mother and her brothers married her off with miyun. To get into the London Samir, it's very complex. There's a whole Reb Chaim and Reb Chabriska, the whole Torah. But understanding how Aviyah is miyun really works. Very complicated shtickle. It's like mamish keep you up all night being dizzy. But that's the story. Okay.
So just to clarify here,
yeah.
Just to get to summarize it so it's crystal clear. So we have two cases. You have a case where a Pikeach married a Chadeshet, and you have a case where a Chadesh married a regular Pikacha. Right?
Yeah.
Now, we're saying that in both cases we don't allow either to eat terumah, either couple out of both marriages. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. But for different reasons.
Yeah. One is not allowed to, and one is a gzeira because we may confuse it with the other couple.
Right. So that's
because we're being mata one, then we're going to end up being mata the other one.
So the one that's not allowed to is the herish.
Right. Correct.
Because he's not. Because he's not ba'adat. Therefore, he doesn't have the privilege of eating terumah. So he's out. So therefore, she would be out. His wife, as a result, would be out because he doesn't have the right. Therefore, the right's not granted to her. Good.
Exactly.
Yeah. In the other case, where you have a regular guy, a pikeach, married to Hareshet, really the Hareshet is allowed to eat.
Right.
However, we're saying from the case where the katana is afforded rights because she was married off by her father, because obviously, or in the case that she's married off by her father, therefore, on that basis, we don't want to confuse it with that. So therefore, we're gonna make a gezerah that she only is not allowed to eat terumah. It's
two cases. It's the pikach and the chereshes, and the cheresh and the pikachas.
Right.
One's allowed to, one's not allowed to. Because the cases are so similar, we might confuse which one's allowed and which one's not allowed.
Both.
So we just make a gzeira and we just knock them all out, and then nobody can eat. And and that's really how it's going to be.
But the himself, he can look at, even though he's married to Hareshet, he can't say he himself cannot.
It's gzeira, right.
Wow.
It's a little, it's
are
a little.
We worried? Are we worried that that he can have people that don't want to marry women that they can't hear as a result of them losing their privilege to terumah?
That's a good
question.
Worried
about that?
And maybe we are. I don't know. I mean, this is an halacha. Is this a separate question? Maybe it's a good question. Yeah, I like the question. Sagt die Mishnah weiter, weil Amorish Hagozl Shabonai Bebira, that Sheyita was dominate according to Shab. Again, the case is he stole a bunch of pieces of wood or one piece of wood, and he built himself a 5-story home. It's somewhere in the middle of this home, and now you're the balabas of this piece of wood. You come over to me and says, "Give me back my beam." They give you back your beam. It's in the middle of the fourth. It's in the bedroom on the 4th floor. I'm going to pull it out for you. Yeah.
So the guy built it knowingly that it was gazul.
Yeah.
Knowing that it was stolen.
Yeah. So Zak the Gemara, Taner Rabbanu, we learned in the Brayz that goes al Morish. He stole the beam of Bani Bebira. Beishamay say mekakea kol abira. Got to bang down the entire house. Kula. Umarz and Morish l'baylam, and you got to return that beam. There's nothing to talk about. Knock down all 6 floors of your house.
He can't give him the monetary equivalent. He has to give him dafka that beam back.
Yeah.
That's going to be Shammai. Good.
Beis Hillel say that you got to give him back the money because takonas hashavim. Because otherwise, what you think if every time somebody steals something and puts it into his house, he's going to have to knock down his whole house. No one's going to want to return anything. That's called takonas hashavim. Or if them zok Beis Hillel that you can give back the money. That's why money is a good tzach, because you could afford paying back for a beam instead of the $6 million that you have to smash down your house and demolition also costs money, even before the construction. Yeah. So that's takonas hashavim. Okay. Here was the last case of the Mishnah, that if somebody stole a carbon chatas, and he was makrivit, so he doesn't need to tell people that it was gazel. Why? Because mipnei tikkun hamizbeach. What's a tikkun hamizbeach? What are we talking about? Omar Ula, Samachlekes. Omar Ula, Dvar Torah. Mina Torah, Bein Noida, Bein Loy Noida, Ena Mechaperes. Whether we know that it was stolen, or whether we don't know that it was stolen, either way, there's no kapara with this carbon. My timer, because Yirush Kadi like Kani, he's not kind of it. It's not his animal, and just Yirush without any kinyan, it's not kind of anything. As Rashi says, Yirush levadav leishinu rishus akara. Yirush is not kind of anything, right? Even like Kani leaning hakrava, vafilu shamina shenisach shabayim lekarina bekarbana. Even if we heard the Bailam being miyayish, it's still not considered as carbon. Yeah? I guess he's got to do a little bit more than that to make it his. And what's the pshat that the Mishnah says that if the carbon was loy noida, that it is mechaper? Shloyu kahanim atzevim. So that's a kahanim shouldn't be sad. Why? Because if this animal was shechted and then Kumtai said it's not a carbon, so then the kahanim ate chulim ba'azara. You know? So then it's isser to lav. So the Kohanim are going to be sad that they were, it was a mistake,
irrespective of the fact that they did not know.
Right. So Rabban said to Ula v'anan mipnei tikkun hamizbeach tonight. What are you telling me, a new pshat that the Kohanim are going to be? I mean, we never want the Kohanim to be sad. I always imagine Kohanim to be very happy people, right? But over here, the Kohanim are going to be sad. It's not good. It's not good to say for the Kohanim to be sad. Right? What are you making up new reasons for? The Mishnah state that it's mipnei tikkun hamizbeach. Amar lahem, he said to the Rabbanon, "Kevin the Kohanim atzevim nimtzum mizbeach." Well, the Kohanim are going to be sad. They're not going to be doing the avodah the way that they should, and they're going to stop doing karbonos. And Zakrashi shenim noam milavoid avodah. They're going to stop doing the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. So we need to make sure that the Kohanim are motivated to do the avodah, and we have to take the proper measures to keep them motivated by doing the right thing, right? If they feel good, then they're going to do good, and then the more good they're going to do, the better they're going to feel. And we want the Kohanim to feel that way. Rabbi Yehuda Amar, that was Ula. That's good. Rabbi Yehuda Amar, Rabbi Yehuda has another mahalach in the sugya. He says, Dvar Torah bein noida bein lo noida mechaper. Whether you know about it, whether you don't know about it, it's mechaper. If the Bailam are miyayish, my timer, Yirush Kedi Kani. Because it's the Velamdus over here. He says that Yirush Kedi is kaina. Even by a carbon, it's still and once they're miyayish, it's going to be considered as carbon, and so it's not good.
Amazing.
And it's not going to be a problem. And what's pshat that the Mishnah says that if you know about it, it's not going to be mechaper. So zokti gemara shelo yoimrim is bach oichel gzelis, because they're going to say that all we care about is karbanos. We don't even care if they steal it. It doesn't make any sense. Like we said, the pasuk says. Soine gezel v'oila. Hashem hates the stolen oila, right? It's like the type of it.
What's the point?
It's type of visharis biyada. You can't get a kapar if you're doing the avera with the actual carbon.
Unbelievable.
So bishlam ula hainu tani chatas. So Meila, according to Ula, that's why we say chatas, because there's achilas kahanim. But Elor of Yehuda might area chatas afilu oilanami. Meaning, if our concern is all about the mizbeach, and not so much the kahanim. So then even the oil, why are we specifying a chatos? Meila chatos because the kohanim eat it, so the kohanim are going to say that they chulim bazar, so the kohanim are saving. Fine. But if the pshat is that because of this gezel on the mizbeach, even the oil, and that's going to be saying a gezel oil. The pasuk says dafka oil by saying gezel oil, and there's a reason for that, right? Not so much a chatos.
Forgive my humble opinion and understanding here. But am I the only one that sees the irony here that the guy is bringing for a korban hatat? He's bringing a stolen
one. Yeah, exactly.
Korban.
Yeah.
So what we're making now.
I mean, why are we handling the question?
We're worried about kohanim being saddened. It's outright prohibited because the guy's it's stolen goods. The guy's bringing korban stolen goods.
Yeah.
Why you have to go so far? Going to be kohanim, going to be saddened, this and validating their work.
Let's see. Yeah, I like the question, but let's see. So my area, v'chatas afilu oilanami. So you're right. We're not specifically talking about an oil that the entire thing gets burnt. Meaning, that we have to go to whatever measure it is to make sure that that the mizbeach doesn't end up getting exaled. So therefore, even if we're going to say that by a chatos, so some of the stuff of the korban, some of the parts of the animal go onto the mizbeach, and the rest of it the kohanim eat it. Afilu hachi, there's still a gzeira that we should be careful, like you're saying, like Isaac is saying. That's takam shot. Shelo yodru, the kohanim are that the mizbeach. I'm sorry, that the mizbeach is like gzeilas.
What do we care? What kind of korban it is?
Right.
They eat. They don't eat.
Yeah.
You're making thumbs, but the guy's out of the gate, 100% no good.
Right. Now I think that's maybe the I had to understand this Gemara. Okay, tonight we learned in the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says that a chatas that was stolen, that was learned the ram, that it's mechaperes because of the tikkun hamizbeach. So bishlam ula necha. So bishlam according to Ula, it's good. That what? Because Ula said that the reason is because that Yish Kedi is like Kani, right? Review the whole that Yish Kedi is Kani. Yeah? According to Yehuda, Zibchim Boile. Why? Which is say that it's Ain't Mechaperes because of Takon Zamizbech. So why does Yehuda say that it is Mechaperes? Right? That's what Yehuda started saying because he says, no, because the Lamda says because Yish Kedi is Kaina. What do you mean Yish Kedi is Kaina? It's Ain't Mechaperes because the Chatz is Gzula.
Exactly.
So Hachinami, I'm sorry. El Rabbi Yehuda B'Chum Boile. So Hachinami Komer Lo Neida. So Hachi Komer. This is what. So Hachinami Komer Lo Neida Mechaperes. Neida Ain't Mechaperes when they took him his back. So Neida, if it was known, then it is Mechaperes. But if it's, I'm sorry, Lo Neida is Mechaperes. Why? Because if they're going to find out afterwards, then they're going to be at same, like the Gemara says. But Noida ain't a mechaperes by taking on his back because you can't bring a korban that was stolen. Massive Rava, Frek the Rava stira from a Gemara, from a Mishnah. Gona v'hikdish. Somebody stole something, then he was makdish it. V'achakach tavach u'machar, and then he stole it, and then he shechted it and he sold it. So mishalim tashlumi kefil ve'enim mishalim tashlumi above a chamisha. He will not pay above a chamisha because above a chamisha does not apply to hektish.
So the guy. So he basically lessened his payment
because
by making it hekdesh.
Yeah.
So the guy stole something. Now he's going to make it hekdesh, and he's basically Wow.
But Tani Allah, and we learned about this, bachutz. That we're talking about that bachutz ki hagavna onish kares. If he shechted a bachutz in such a case, he's chayiv kares. Now 1 second, we just said we're holding the marv, they're ready to start. I guess they'll let us know. We just said that this is going to be, if he was makdish it, right? So then it's going to be only double and not 4 or 5 times more.
Right.
So how could you tell? This is the Rabbanon. So how could you tell me that there's a chiyuv kares over here? It's Rabbanon. The Rabbanon can make a chiyuv kares. Rabbanon can't be mechayiv kares. Huh?
If he's over on hekdesh, it's not karet.
But that would be a deraisa. But the Rabbanon can't say when something's a chiyuv kares or not. Huh? So let's see. The Amrid Yish Kedi Lokani Karas Ma'avidite. If he's saying the Yish is not going to be kindness, then why should he get Karas? Some Rav Shizvi, Karas Midivrayhem. He'll get Karas Midrabbanon. Achichulei. So they started laughing at him because Karas Midivrayhem Yika. No such concept as Karas Midrabbanon. So Amalhu Rava, Gava Rabba Omar Mills like to Chuchu Alei. A great man said something, don't laugh at him. Maybe there's something to it. Try to understand what he says before you laugh at it. So karas shal yedei divrei bosalei. He's not getting a karas because he was over in the Rabbanon. He's over on the Deraisa. But it's because of what the Rabbanon said about this Deraisa of what he did. He's going to get karas.
So you telling me if they didn't say anything, he would be absolved from the karet of the Oraita?
Let's say Gemara is going to go through this. So Zok Gemara like this. Ukmur Rabbanon b'rshusei. The Rabbanon put it b'rshus the Ganev. The Rabbanon put this animal that he stole in the Rishus of the Ganev, and if he was makdish, sheyachol of hektish gomer, v'sheischayv kares b'shchetana b'chutz, to make him chayiv kares if he was shechted outside the Beis Hamikdash. Ki hechad ukmur b'rshus elinin kapara, uknasi the konsuv hefker bez and hefker v'kacha. Whatever the lumdus is of how it's working, but that's what the Rabbanon do. So ukmur Rabbanon b'rshus kehechad l'chayiv Allah. Omarova havada kamabayli. So this is exactly what was bothering me. Why? Because ki ugmura rabbanon b'rshus and mishas gneva and mishas hagdisha. When did the rabbanon put it into his rishus? When b'shas gneva, or when they were makdish it, or mishas, or from the time he was makdish it. L'may nafkamina. The nafkamina would be l'gizei v'ladei for the shearings of the wool and for the babies that this animal is going to have. Why? Because the lifnei hektish, because before he was makdish it, right? The payers basically of this that this animal is going to make afterwards.
Right.
So does that belong to hektish or does that belong to him?
Exactly.
So what's the halacha? So hoda omarova mistaber the mishas hekdeja. Mistaber to say that it's from the shas hektish le'echaytinis. We're good?
So they did it. They really did it.
This is minion? I just didn't think it was minion. Okay. Okay, great.